So because Linux is the way that Linux is, or was, back in the day, where you actually had to fucking understand somewhat development, architecture, computing to actually run, like it was like a project for an engineer to install Linux back in the day. That's user base 1. It's like the GOAT. And this is the wannabes. That's the user base we have now. So the totalitarian of GOATs, people that are in the GOAT mode, that just slap Linux around like it's nobody's business, that have the knowledge to do so, that understand or can understand the complexities of actually maintaining, running a system that is almost non-maintainable and runnable, is only a certain amount, and it's a small part of the user base, of the overall what is it called? Computing user base. So if this is like all PC users in the world, that's not an A, that should be a U. That's only user base 1. So the people that can manipulate Linux, that can make Linux its biatch, the GOATs, we already reached that to some degree with Linux. They also get replaced, they get tired, they get, they are not on this earth anymore, and some younger people come in, but the people that can really fuck around with Linux operating systems and shit, like no matter what OS it is, they can make it bend to their will. So Linux was not around. They were fucking around with other OSs. And I would say about 2010, so if you say this is 2010, we kind of reached user base 1 peak. That's also about the time where Linux became, in some people's eyes, too easy. Linux is like, Arch was messing around, talking about installers. People were making installers for Arch. Gentoo became more documented, become easier to install. Linux from scratch, I don't know if it was around back then, but I think it was easier to install. Like, everything just become easy because for like almost 20 years, people have documented, made tools, bettering Linux for the masses. Like, Ubuntu came in 2004. Ubuntu really became into its existence as we see it today in 2008 and 9, was when it started to become what it is today. And a lot of distributions followed the same philosophy because it gave them a lot of users. So these hardcore users, if you want to call them then user base 1, we reached the peak in like 2010. And then if we say over here it's like 2026, well, Linux is about to reach user base 2. And that's the wannabes. This is the one that think they know what they're doing with Linux, but they don't really. They think it's cool because they're installing this alternative OS and, I have to do some command lines. They don't really know what the command lines actually fucking means. They don't know what is the famous one. Is it RF or RM? Is it F or A or what? I can't remember the command right now. The one that removes all and recursive. RSR. Is it RS-R? RM-R. Is that the one removed recursively? I can't remember right now. But they know they have to put this in. They don't know what it does in the back end. They don't know what it actually means. They just know they have to put this in. That's user base 2. User base 1 kind of know why you have to do this. So that's all the wannabes that get like a nerd bone on when they sit in the terminal and they fucking get all glazed in their nipples and they fucking like they go on eBay and order pressed milk because we need Mobbus proteins from cows are not good enough anymore. We need the real fucking proteins and stuff like that. It's all of those kind of people that are in user base 2. It's the one that knows a little bit more than the average, non-techie, but they don't know enough to be called like goats. It takes decades to come to that point of using computers. You can't just start. Oh, I can program Hello World, and now I'm a fucking goat developer. No, it takes years of doing stuff and stuff like that. I will be using Linux back in 2010 while Wine was still... I wouldn't be using Linux back in 2010 while Wine was still... Well, Wine is still a thing. Proton is built on Wine. So, yeah, you are a user too. You don't understand that. Wine... So, even before Steam, Proton and Steam, we ran Steam on Linux and had a success running a lot of Windows games on there. They were just not as optimized because Steam has not, or Valve has not given them a lot of the secret sauce. But this user group down here, they played Steam games on Linux way before Proton. They played Epic Game Store games, they played Microsoft Store games, they... Back in the day, like in the 90s, if you wanted to play, I think it was Doom 3 or Quake, something like that. You installed Vine and you installed the launcher via Vine, and then you took the data file from the disk and put it in a specific folder in your root folder. And then you could actually play that game. But we were talking about moving like a 10 gigabyte file or something like that. It was one big file, more or less, that you moved into that folder. And the only reason why that worked was because that specific game was developed on a Unix system. And that was where they had the game files before they packaged it for Windows and stuff like that. So the launcher that started the game looked in there to see if the game was there before or after it looked if it was on the CD-ROM or DVD or whatever the fuck it was. So the user base 1 people, they reverse engineered that. The user base 2 people cannot do that. But also the user base 2 people are also the one that's the most annoying, the most pretentious, the most toxic people, because they have enough knowledge to know that they know more than mom and pop, but they don't understand that they don't understand anything. That's the problem with user base 2. You actually need a user base 3 also. And that is like the normies. So user base 2 is basically just a normie that has taken a 101 weekly course in whatever they're doing. That's the equivalent knowledge to it, roughly speaking. And they are the one that's going into forums and calling skill issues. Those are the one yelling and screaming at Windows is bad, proprietary software is bad. Those are the ones that runs around and think they're better than everyone else. That's user base 2. Because they don't understand what they don't understand. And to know a subject, no matter if it's computing, finding your best making a good cup of coffee. If you want to be great at it, you need to know what you don't know. Because to be great, you have to learn the things you don't know. If you already think I know enough or I know everything, you don't know what you're talking about. Because nobody knows everything. No matter how, let's say you worked in a field in 30 years, you still have room to learn. There comes new things, new ideas. There's always room for learning. The best way of seeing someone, if you don't want to talk to them, if they are a user base of 1 or 2, people that never stop learning, expanding, they typically are in user base 1. Because they know that to keep up or to understand, they need to learn. The one that learned one thing, I am a C# developer, I'm a JavaScript developer, I am a PC guy, I am a PlayStation guy, I only wear Adidas, I only wear Nike. Those are typically user base 2. Because they go into that specific brand or that specific technology and they learn as much as they think they need to learn about it and they stay there. But here's the thing, to understand Linux, you need to understand FreeBSD, you need to understand Windows, you need to understand Mac OS. So you know what the difference is, so you know, okay, where is the strength and the benefits of using one over the other. If you only know Nike, you only know PlayStation, you cannot give good advice about PlayStation, or Nike, or Linux. Because you only know Linux. And there's no thing on earth that is the best of everything. There's no thing that is a one thing fix all. And that's what user base 2 and the normies don't understand, but the user base 1 understand. Oh, I meant to say 2023 here, sorry. And then here we can have 2026. So, growth in user base. And this is not like a representation of we are like 50% of the desktop market. No, this is just like within the desktop market, Linux already have. And then we are about, I would say Linux is not ready for the mainstream yet, so we are about here. So you will see sometimes you will have like, you have a quick spurt from no users to all the user base of one. They just flock, the one that's the one to fuck with Linux. They start to fuck with Linux early on. Like within like the first 5 years, all of the really, really hardcore Linux users, they would already be there within like 5 years time. And stay there until Linux becomes too easy for them or whatever the fuck it is. And then you will see like from 2010, I would say about 2018, maybe 15, Linux stood still a little bit. Then it had a massive growth to 2020, 23. Where it became so, you know, when the whole Proton came and stuff like that, it got a lot of user base too. And now Linux is so well understood, so well documented, and so easy to use that now we're getting a lot of user base 3 years in. But because Linux don't support a lot of the things that Windows and other operating systems support, like the convenience and ease of life, and the thing that makes the normies want to use it is not really there for a lot of people. So they don't migrate even though they could. You know, like I miss my Adobe, I miss my this, I miss my that, even though there are alternatives and all that shit. They don't give a fuck. But for Linux to deal with those, they have to provide that, and that means making Linux better to develop for, more standardized, more corporate, more proprietary to some degree, and blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't hurt to specialize. So here's the thing, to be a specialist, if you're a Linux specialist, you understand Mac OS and Windows. It's that simple. Because if I come up to, let's say you as a Linux specialist, and I'm like, so I have this problem here. Would Linux fix it for me? Windows do this thing, would Linux fix it for me? And you cannot say yes to that problem, or say that Linux will fix it, if you don't know why Windows have a problem there. Like, you don't have to be a specialist in Windows to be a specialist in Linux, but you have to understand Windows better than most people to be a specialist in Linux. If I come up and say, we want to migrate, we have a problem with this Windows machine, can Linux fix it? And if you just say yes, and we install Linux, and it turns out Linux is actually worse at this fucking workload than Windows is, you are not getting any fucking work anymore. And that's where a lot of Linux users, they fail to understand, is that, and that's because their user base too, is that this well, Linux has been pre-installed on computers for almost 20 years now. People have been able to buy, if we go further back, since 2000-ish, 2002, you in some way, shape, or form have been able to either go into a store and buy a boxed version of Linux, or a computer with Linux on it. You've been able online to buy a boxed version of Windows, or hardware with a boxed version of Linux and hardware with Linux on it. Nobody really did it besides user base 2 and user base 1. HP, Dell, Lenovo have in some way, shape, or form allowed you to install Linux or buy pre-built computers with Linux since about 2010 online. They have advertised it, they have showed. To this day, when you go on to Lenovo's website, some of their computers, you can choose what OS you want. Windows Home, Windows Professional, Ubuntu, or Fedora. People still don't click on Windows and Linux unless they really fucking need it. And again, that's because user-base 2 people that think they understand this problem. They don't understand that the problem is not that oh, you can't, Linux is not accessible. Linux is accessible. People just don't want it. Like, I can talk for 10 hours about how the user-base 2 is ruining it, basically, both for user-base 1 people and user-base 3 people. And again, now we're talking OS. It's the same, like I said, with the clothes, Nike clothes. A lot of people that really understand what brand and clothes is about is getting ruined by people in the middle, the user-base 2 people that just understand enough to feel smart. Good morning, George. And the normies get ruined by the security complex of user-base 2. Because they want help, and user-base 1, or users 1, or consumers 1 are the one that actually should help them, but they get outshined of the sheer fact of there is so many user-base 2 people that don't really know what the fuck they're talking about, but they're really, really loud, and they're really, really obnoxious, and they are always online because they don't really do what they're talking about, they're just talking about it, so they have more time to do whatever the fuck they're doing. So the middle user base, like user base 2 or consumer 2, is ruining for everyone else. And it's super irritating for user base 3 people and user base 1 people. If you want to run Linux and not like Ubuntu Linux or Arch Linux or catchy OS Linux, you have to, if you want to run pure Linux, you have to run the vanilla kernel. But it just gets confusing to think about it like that. And again, different between mindset from user base 1 and user base 2. User base 2, that's why, like, when I say Linux, I have to explain Linux is the whole ecosystem, because the normies, when they hear Linux, they understand this. The user base 1 people, when they hear Linux, they understand when people say Linux, they know that Linux is the kernel, but they also know that to further the conversation and make it easier, like, it's easier to just say Linux than say, well, today we are talking about Ubuntu, that is a Linux /GNU /GNOME /systemd /KDE /VLC, and then name all of the packages in the repository. But the user base 2 mentality are the one that wants GNU /Linux. Ubuntu /GNOME /GNU Linux. That's the user base 2 mentality. Because they feel like it's really important to show how clever we are. If you cannot simplify something, you don't understand what you're talking about. If you admire the complexity of something, you don't understand it. And again, that's why the user base 2 or the consumer or the user base 2 mentality is the one ruining it for everyone. It's the same people that go to whatever fucking Linux commentator or channel, and they talk about Linux and they talk about Ubuntu, and they're like, oh, well, technically Linux is only the kernel. Well, the normies don't need to know this. They don't have to know this. You don't go and say when there's a blue screen of death and it's a Windows kernel problem, you don't see Windows users tell the norms, well, technically it's not Windows that's the issue, it's the Windows NT kernel that's the issue here. So it's not the userland, it's not the DirectX rendering system that renders the desktop, it's the kernel. The normies don't need to know this, and the user base 1 people, the goats, they already understand this. The only one that needs to have it specifically told are the people that don't fucking know what they're talking about, is the middle people. And I am on a war with the middle people. I've been since day one I started this channel, because they are ruining it for two group of people with it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, look that up. But now I feel we are beginning to come a little bit with Linux, where well, the user base, the potential maximum users of user base 2 combined with the potential users of user base 1 that wants to run Linux, we kind of already reached it. Linux has been standing still for like 3 or 4 years, if not 5 years, on the user base. Like, we hovered around like 3.5, maybe 4 or something, but we have hovered around almost nothing. We never had like a growth spurt, and that's bad. And now we see DJ Ware just made a video where he's checking out FreeBSD, and you see more and more Linux user base 1 people, like which DJ Ware is one of them. You see a lot of those goats. They start to try out Hygo now. They try to start out FreeBSD or OpenBSD and stuff like that. So a lot of these people here, well, they are now running over to FreeBSD. Because Linux is not a challenge anymore. It's too easy. It's too well documented. If there's a problem, I can just ask a stupid AI or a fucking teenager and they will help me out with it. You know, they don't have, it's not intellectual challenging anymore. And then they have to deal with the people that think they are smart, the user base 2 people that runs and scream like they fucking know-it-alls and think they're smarter than fucking Einstein because they can install Arch Linux. They don't want to deal with those fucking idiots. Those smart, stupid people, as I also like to call them. And the normies don't want to deal with them either. Because when the normies talk to them, they just get a lot of tech babble they don't understand. Because user base 2 people don't understand, well, to talk to normies, you have to talk their language. And if you can't, in quote, dumb it down to their language, you don't understand what you're talking about. The user base 1 people can dumb it down so a normie understands it. A user base 2 person have a really hard time. A user base 2 people is also the same one that says, I refuse to work on Windows computers. So if you have a Windows computer and you're in my family, I'm not helping you. User base 2 mentality, by the way. So now user base 1 Linux users are now going over to FreeBSD. Or at least that's what I'm noticing watching content about FreeBSD. And then at some point, what happened here will also happen with FreeBSD. It happened with Windows, with Mac OS. This is like the circle of any OS. It's a niche, it's difficult, it's interesting, it's unique. And that draws in a lot of people that want to feel special. A lot of people that think they're special. A lot of people that want an intellectual challenge and so on and so on and so on. But when that becomes too normie, I look at it like I call Linux users hipsters a lot of time. And we all have this friend, and I use this beer example a lot, where you go to a bar with a friend, and we all have this one friend that only either wear this clothes because it's organically made by virgins in the Cayman Islands or something like that. But in this case, this dude, Joe, is only drinking craft beer from this local brewery down the street. Every bar we go to, he only orders that because it's non-corporate, it's all of the fucking bullshit that you hear from hipster. Then one day, this local brewery get bought up or fused into a supply chain that's owned by a big company. So they can, instead of just selling it to the local town, they can now sell it internationally, even nationally if they want to. It's not the same beer anymore, Joe says. What's wrong with it? Yeah, after they got bought up or fused in or merged with this supply chain vendor or whatever, yeah, they must have changed the formula or something because it don't taste the same anymore. And all they did was just either get bought out, but they didn't fuck with the formula because why fuck with something that sells? Why fuck with something that works? But those kind of people do that. It's the same people that say that Ubuntu is Microsoft. Why? Because Ubuntu do business deals. Ubuntu, that is a corporate for-profit business, do things that for-profit corporate businesses do and have done since they have existed. So when you say that Ubuntu is Microsoft, well, McDonald's is Microsoft, Nike is Microsoft, your local store is Microsoft, where you buy your condoms. Your condom manufacturers, Microsoft. Your AI girlfriend manufacturers, Microsoft. Because they do things that corporate entities do to survive. Or take over a market, or stay relevant in a market. And focusing more on the people that are paying them than people that are leeching. Again, user base 2 mindset here, people. The user base 1 people are getting fed up with all of this. Linux is too easy for them. There's no things to get gained by learning, using Linux anymore. And then they have to deal with the user base 2 people running around swinging their dick in their faces. Where do they not have to deal with that? And some of them don't want to deal with normies either. Where do you not have to deal with that? Haiku, Solaris, and FreeBSD. So that's the natural habitat for Linux user base 1 people. Is to migrate over to another OS. That is where Linux was 26 years ago. And here's the thing, FreeBSD in many cases are ahead of Linux. And FreeBSD in a lot of cases are not that far from Linux. It's like, I would say like using FreeBSD today is like using Linux in 2010 to 15.